And we are live. How's it going, everyone? Today we have some special guests with us bringing liquidity, capital efficiency, and yield to NFTs, all while simultaneously lowering the barrier to entry. Co-founders Luke and Mary are joining me today. How's it going?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, great. It's amazing to have you guys on here, and I'm just really excited with what's going on at Bridgesplit, right? You guys are truly building something novel, and I'll kind of just let you guys take it away. Do you want to maybe introduce yourselves and what you're doing at Bridgesplit first before we get into the specifics of the protocol?
Sure. Mary, you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. So Luke and I met at Duke a few years ago. We are both software engineers kind of by trade. Luke spent some time in economics and doing quant trading, and I spent some time doing product. We most recently worked on a defense staffing business that we sold together last year before really getting into crypto. And the thing that we cared about kind of the most then was the idea of mass market adoption. It was frustrating to see metrics like TVL and really low daily active user numbers. And we were focused on how do we get like the next billion people to have a crypto address. And to us, it seemed like the vehicle for onboarding the next billion users was going to be NFTs. And the chain to support it was going to be Solana. And so that's what brought us to Bridgesplit. Luke, if you want to explain a little bit more about Bridgesplit itself.
Yeah, so we're building, as you mentioned, Greg, a very broad NFT liquidity platform focused on finding different ways to financialize NFTs. And the purpose of kind of taking that step beyond kind of where NFTs are today is really to drive more value to the ones who create NFTs, drive more value to the ones who hold NFTs, and then ultimately improve capital efficiency broadly in crypto. And the thing that excites us the most about NFTs and why like this is a relevant path to take is just the idea of creating something that's digitally unique that can be tokenized, tracked, and then ultimately used kind of throughout broader internet tools and things like that. And a lot of things, right, fall into that bucket of needing to be unique by pricing, unique by application, unique by the different demand from different people. And being able to kind of find that value as fast and as efficiently as possible is very important for being able to utilize that the value that you have kind of stored in one of these assets more broadly. And so we're excited about kind of the different approaches to solving that problem, and kind of our focus really is on that liquidity engine, which is really centered on index funds and things kind of that are peripheries of index funds. But we've kind of started a step before that with this idea of fractionalization. Well, fractionalization is really just an index fund of one asset, right? So we kind of wanted to just kind of build up a little bit of awareness about what we're doing and showcase a little bit of our product and dev skills, while also kind of building a platform for the future, which we'll be releasing fairly shortly here. And if any of you read the press release from our recent fundraise, you've seen that we do have quite a bit in store here for the next month and a half, 2 months, as it relates to how we're going to be rolling out the full product. But from there, right, once you have that liquidity, a huge kind of network possibilities opens up. Things like collateralized lending, things like different derivative products, and you start getting into very exciting territory. But I'll let you.
So no, that's incredibly exciting, and I think you just touched on a bunch of different things. So I don't know where we'll dive in first. I think even just more fun, like let's touch on this funding round. I'm curious what this meant for you guys as a protocol. Like this probably really jump started everything, got things moving. I see you guys are doing a ton of hiring. Can you maybe touch on what this support really means, how it's moving you guys forward?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, we partnered with folks on the investing side that we really felt like had specific, intentions around what we're trying to build. Kind of starting at the top, Coin Fund is a firm that we got very close to over the last couple months of this process, and they're a company that hasn't done a ton of Solana investments, where I think we're kind of along with Holoplex, they're for their first big ones, but they are very deep in the space of NFT liquidity, NFT financialization. And the reason for that is they believe, as we do, that NFTs kind of have this like very unique potential to do all kinds of things for crypto, right? Bringing new assets into the space that aren't there already, gaming, real world, whatever it is, right? And so they've been able to help us direct a lot of our thoughts on this process, get us in touch with more folks, especially as we're thinking about bridging assets from other chains, namely Ethereum, bringing some of those assets over. And then Jump Capital is obviously a huge player in the engineering side on Solana. With Wormhole and Pith, and they have a big engineering team, and they're also market makers. And what do you need to have liquidity? You need market makers. You need people who are willing to take both sides. And then we've got kind of that longer array of people who have kind of their different roles. And really, we wanted to raise this money partly to be able to hire folks and to move faster, but also to get people on our team that have been there before and they've done a lot of this stuff. And so we're really excited about the folks that we've got joining us, and we think it's going to be an awesome group to kind of push things forward throughout the next 6 months or so.
And I think that's amazingly notable. You guys have massive players in the space supporting you. You guys also have Solana ecosystem, people who are very involved with NFTs kind of on board as angels and all of that. And I think something that someone mentioned that really stuck with me is at this point in time, it's not about getting funding, it's about who your funding is. And it looks like you guys were definitely pretty selective with who you guys really wanted on board and backing the project. So that's always just kind of a great way to get a first look into the project. Who's backing this? Are they selective on who is able to back it? And I just thought that was really cool because you threw out the funding. To jump into maybe some more of like the products here, do you maybe want to outline the basics of Bridgesplit, what you guys have going on in the ecosystem? I know you mentioned NFT collateralization, maybe fractionalization is where we can start with this.
Yeah, Mary, you want to go for it?
Yeah. So kind of the core of the product is like these two sides of the marketplace for NFTs that people don't have today. And one of them is accessing flexible and liquid exposure. Right now, the kinds of positions you can take on NFTs are like buying one or like selling one. You can't take like a leverage position. You can't take just general exposure to a pool. So looking to solve that problem on that side. And then kind of on the other side of this is for people who are NFT holders today, giving them an opportunity to earn yield on NFTs generally as an asset class. And so the way that generally works is a series of pools, which enable exposure for one side of this marketplace and then enable yield for the liquidity providers of that marketplace. And so kind of the thing we started with off the bat, which Luke mentioned, which is single asset fractionalization, which at the end of the day is like a single asset pool. But kind of moving forward, focused on a lot of different creative types of pools that we think are really relevant for NFT liquidity. So whether that's collection-based pools, fraction-based pools, just kind of Ethereum-based pools is another thing we're working on. And kind of all of that just comes together to create a really liquid system and liquid stack for NFTs that enables us to do things like NFT collateralized lending, because now suddenly you can sell the asset, you could have a price for the asset, because you have a much more liquid market around it. So that's kind of our roadmap moving forward, is continuing to build out these pools, getting the right partners on board to make sure there's liquidity in these pools, and then doing the things that those pools enable, which are things like collateralized lending.
Yeah, that's amazing. And when I was just first starting to look in Bridgesplit, I got really excited. For someone like me who's heavy into NFTs, it's massively mainly my portfolio, especially on Solana. It's really exciting to really see DeFi step into these products. I'm curious, like, can we take a step back for maybe users who aren't 100% into NFTs and DeFi and explain why this infrastructure is so important for NFTs? Because currently it doesn't exist. I mean, I know there's people building it, but there's no go-to place if you want to fractionalize an NFT, take out collateral on an NFT. And then we get into things like floor perps. And I have questions about that because I think that's interesting. But to take a step back, like in most layman terms for normies, however you want to put it, why is infrastructure so important?
Yeah, I think so. Today, the way, again, like you get exposure to the asset class is very limited. In one way, that limits institutions from participating in the asset class and for letting it grow, because right now it's a pretty unproductive kind of asset. So if you are someone that has an NFT in your wallet, you can just hold that NFT, versus if you had SOL in your wallet, you could take out a loan against it. You can put it in a yield aggregator. So for someone who's like looking to make money, or an institutional fund, they're probably going to take the position where they can make even more money. So like buying something like SOL. And then even more, it is a way for NFT's value to actually be recognized. Today, we've been talking a lot about like artists who are minting albums as NFTs and selling albums as NFTs. And the issue today is if they were to create that, it like someone is paying some amount of money for it, but it doesn't necessarily have a concrete value, in that you can't like take out a loan against it. Like no one knows how much it's worth. And just because you guaranteed a sale at one point doesn't mean it's its actual value. And so infrastructure like this gives NFTs a definitive, at least minimum value. That way, if an artist wants to take out, for example, a collateralized loan against an album that they haven't dropped yet, or other NFTs that represent art, they get that economic freedom to do so. And it just enables every asset to be a productive economic asset and for people to like monetize and make a living off those assets in a way they weren't able to before.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
just to expand on that a little bit, like the going forward when we look at like all the different things that could be NFTs, like the only people who are going to innovate and build those things that can become NFTs, really at the end of the day, is going to come down to somebody's ability to make money doing that. And so you need the ability for those folks who are going to put all this work and all this time and ultimately venture capital and other investment, to have avenues for recouping some of that investment, whether it's time or money, and the ability to financialize these assets that are ultimately going to be extremely valuable, is going to go a long way in making kind of incentivizing innovation on the asset class.
Definitely. And I think something that's just really important for people who aren't in the NFT space that they don't understand is just this concept of liquidity, right? If you have a very rare NFT, it's pretty difficult to find a buyer for that NFT. And this is sort of gets to the fundamentals of fractionalization. You're able to lower this barrier of entry. I'm curious, I know you guys were teasing previously before you guys fractionalized the degen ape, or were playing with the idea of it. I was trying to explain this live stream to my mom since I'm out of office here back home. And she was like, so do you just own a section of this NFT? Is it like, I know you guys were teasing like the nipple of the degen ape. Is this how it would work? And I guess the broader question here outside of that is, can we break down fractionalization, what the concepts are? Like, can you break it into 500 pieces, 1,000 pieces? I know you guys have an NFT buyout system. Maybe just touch on all of that.
Go for it, Luke.
Yeah, so basically you've got just this idea of it's not, or fortunately or unfortunately, it's not taking little pictures of the different parts of it. But what effectively is happening is we're taking that NFT, locking it into a contract that's now owned by our program. So nobody has custody over it, right? And then we mint a new token that you determine how much of, that is now given to the person who fractionalized it. And then those tokens that you get have certain governance rights. If you read any of our pieces on kind of the complexities with fractionalization, we talk about this a little bit, but what governance rights do you give people who own fractions of an NFT? And those fractions, in our case, represent a few things. So financially, they represent the ability to claim a percentage of the amount that is paid out in the event that the asset is sold. So that's one piece of it, right? Asset stuck in a contract, it gets listed for sale. Somebody buys it out of there just like they would on Magic Eden or whatever. The money that's sitting in there has some percentage rights to the fraction holders. The second thing is governance rights. So you have the ability as a fraction holder to click yes or no that you think the asset should be listed for sale, and the price that you think it should be listed for sale at. We aggregate those votes proportionally amongst all the holders, and that gets you kind of to your aggregate result. And then, kind of the final piece of this eventually is utility fractionalization. And we're going to announce something pretty cool here in the next couple of days that has to do with utility fractionalization. But the examples of that we like to give are, you own 20% of a monkey. Does that give you right to the monk DAO? Does it give you right to the degen, ape DAO? And in long term, I think the answer will be yes. And whether or not it's true in the next month or two is going to depend a lot on the projects. But I think longer term, it's going to become almost inevitable that as you have these very fixed supply collections and eventually other assets that are coming on chain as NFTs, you're going to need the ability to kind of fractionalize some of that utility, whether it's time based, at like level of access based, or something like that. But yeah.
I was definitely thinking that in just like the regards, especially some of these NFTs that are being used in Web3 gaming, they do have a lot of utility. just to jump a bit from that, it looks like you guys are already starting to play around with this idea a bit. You have the Playground Waves DAO, the piece 999, I believe, that you guys are fractionalizing. And this has something very similar, right? If the holder owns 20%, they'll be able to get into the DAO chat room for Playground. Do you maybe want to touch on this? I know the fractionalization is coming up, and this will start trading on the 23rd, correct? So do you maybe want to outline what's going to happen here?
Yeah, so we're excited about that partnership with Playground DAO, and they actually bought all of the waves they own on the open market, which is, I think, even cooler. And the wave they've chosen to fractionalize is the wave that they use on kind of all of their marketing materials on their website. And they've decided that 20% owners can actually get access into the DAO. And so it's going to kind of expand ownership. And I'm pretty sure the floor for waves right now is around 15 SOL or something. And so it'll lower the barrier to entry for people who want to join. And the thing we keep hearing from collections is that this is obviously an exciting prospect, because if you have a 5,000 piece or a 1,000 piece collection, that means only 1,000 people like in the world are energized about your product and are excited and telling people about it, versus opening those doors to like 50,000 people. And the cool thing about fractional ownership is that you can actually tier that access. So you can say like 10% gets you Discord membership, 20% gets you merch, 50% gets you some experience, but you can't vote, say, unless you're a full NFT holder. So there's always something to kind of strive for in that specific collection. And so that's what we're kind of working with Playground Waves on, is we're working with Great Protocols so that 20% holders of the wave can actually participate in the Playground DAO. So that'll be trading live on Thursday, the 23rd, like you mentioned. Yeah, and I believe we're splitting that into 10,000 pieces with the ticker WAVE without the E.
Yeah, that's awesome there. And I know you guys have already successfully fractionalized the Dow Jones, a Solana Monkey Business NFT. I'm curious on you kind of did this play on words, the Dow Jones, which I think is amazing. For NFT indexes, is this something where it'll be an index of multiple collections in the future, or are you just kind of having these indexes as the one DAO NFT that's fractionalized?
Go for it.
I was say, yeah. So it's actually going to look, there's a few products out there that kind of try for these indexing things. And one version of that is this idea that you take a bunch of NFTs of the same collection, you deposit them all into the same pool, so the same smart contract, like the way we're doing with one asset now, and then you issue tokens that represent ownership of all of those assets. And that's fine. The issue becomes kind of, especially when you price everything the same, like if you know NFTX on Ethereum, they kind of try to do this idea of indexing, but it's very focused on kind of like the most simple example. But we're aiming for something a little bit higher, which is just the idea that you can deposit any asset that you want into one of these pools, and you could have thousands of NFTs that are all represented by the same fractions. There'll be both permissionless and permission, where, in one case, maybe it's a curator. I'm like a Soul Big Brain or one of these, very large influential folks. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to put 100 of my monkeys into a basket, and I want to let all my followers just kind of follow along with like the NFTs that I own. And so they can come buy shares of that big basket. The other one is a little bit more open. And so this is one anybody can deposit into, anybody can withdraw from. And pricing is determined based on an oracle. That's at first tracking floor pricing, and then as we're able to improve pricing, it'll kind of be refined based on rarities and things like that. But you can deposit any asset into that. It'd be all mixed and whatever else it is. But to answer your question in short, it's not just going to be one asset. It's going to be many assets, and it could be any assets from any collection. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's amazing, and definitely something to look forward there. I just wanted to touch on some other features as well. So going back to the trading, since this is coming up, you guys are going to be supporting these fractionalized tokens on Radium and Serum, if I'm correct there. How do the liquidity pools work like this? I imagine it's just a normal liquidity pool. And you guys mentioned you'll be able to earn yield. In the beginning, will this just be off the trading fees? Do you have plans of incentivizing this in the future? Where are you guys at with all of those things?
Yeah, so the way the pools work right now is the person who's fractionalizing it obviously has the asset, and so they provide the initial liquidity to the Radium pool, and then anyone can kind of trade on that. And the reason we have kind of the um, underlying or additional CRM extension is for lower liquidity pools, which happens to be something that's pretty commonplace in single asset fractionalization. It allows you to still trade with ease. And then for the kind of multi-asset pools, we are intending to run like an incentivization program. It doesn't make as much sense for single asset fractionalization. And I don't know if that's a sustainable form of incentivization, but we think kind of having these really high liquidity pools for ones that are focused on broader collections or a broader number of assets is really important. So we will be running somewhat of a liquidity farming program early next year.
Awesome. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense there. I was curious, is this probably going to be a similar mechanism for attracting liquidity for this NFT collateralization and being able to take a loan against your NFTs? What are the plans there for attracting this liquidity so NFT holders can actually take out a loan against it?
You want to go for it, Luke?
Yeah. So the kind of the biggest thing in all of this, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, but is institutional adoption. There are a lot of funds, that are interested in getting involved in this market, but don't necessarily know how. And so we've been leveraging a lot of our relationships there to start spinning up similar market making structures to what you have, on your typical AMM for any token that's listed, right? Folks are getting kind of aligned with different market making partners, et cetera, to come in and ensure that there is liquidity into these pools. And so that partly comes from the ability for folks to make money on that and trade that, right? Which means that you are going to need a select few pools that are really, really high value or at least high quality. And then you're going to have a periphery of maybe, 50 to 75% of these pools that are going to have like weird combinations of assets, and there's not going to be a lot going on in them. And you can't really do much about that, but you want people to do what they want to do, right? So if people want to put assets into these pools that aren't super liquid, that's fine. But we're going to concentrate all of our effort on ensuring there's a few pools that have one, institutional support, and two, high farming rewards, both of the index token and the Bridgesplit token. And obviously the mechanisms for going in and out of that pool are as efficient as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense there. And I know the sort of collateralization may be a little bit further out, but do you want to touch on the process of this? How are you managing this liquidation engine, the risks of this? How does this all look? Because I know it's a pretty novel concept.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
No worries.
Yeah, so I mean that's the kind of what we think of as really our core product is this idea of liquidation engine, right? Like we're not a collateralized lending platform by itself, right? We want to provide the liquidation support for anybody to do collateralized lending with NFTs using our liquidation engine, right? And so a part of that plays into what we're doing with index funds, and that's going to be a big piece of this. A part of it ties into the ability to price collateral with the same mechanisms you're pricing those index funds. And then the fractionalization does play into this as well, being able to liquidate pieces of an NFT to pay back the pieces of a loan that have now become under collateralized, right? And things like that. And so there is a fairly robust set of things that have to happen in order for that to work. But actually, once we finish kind of the last step of this current roadmap, which is automated index pools, we'll be very close. And so we're going to release our white paper as soon as that's ready to go. We've got it done. We're just kind of being patient and careful with that before we reveal too much. But it actually won't be that long until we're ready for collateralized lending. We just really need to build up that liquidity base first, which I think is something that the people who have attempted this on Ethereum, and I'm sure that there's others on either Solana or Avalanche or wherever that are trying to do collateralized lending. But the thing that they all get wrong is they're not doing the liquidity in a sustainable way, and they're really focused on kind of either peer-to-peer or auction-based liquidations, which are really poor forms of getting sustainable liquidity. And so that's kind of why we've got a little bit more creative solution to it that we'll be excited to reveal like kind of in depth when the white paper is ready. And I don't know, maybe people don't read white papers, but
I will definitely be reading it. And I imagine that segues smoothly into the NFT derivatives, and sort of the main kind of goal there is getting liquidity and then really making sure that liquidation engine is robust. Something I'm just curious, and this is like a general question I throw out with having these high value digital assets in your contracts, what are sort of the security and due diligence checks you guys are looking to be proactive on these type of things? Granted, it'll never be perfect, but it's always nice to see these measures in place.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have a very robust checklist of things that we're going through for every single product that we're releasing. Part of it is done by professional auditors. They have their processes, they have their things that they do. And then part of it is internal, and that's kind of the thing we do first, right? Because that's the thing we're able to do. And then once we're done with that, we've passed it off to auditors to do the stuff that we've already done, right? And then as we kind of move through the rest of these products, we'll kind of follow a similar path, which is, making sure that like we're as comprehensive as we can be with our Rust tests, with our TypeScript tests on our program, and our penetration testing on our front end. We've got folks, both Mary and I have kind of gone through some of this in traditional web dev and in Solidity. We've got others on our team who have some experience in security. But of course, at the end of the day, like you said, you can never know for sure, right? There's always like very creative, weird ways that people can get, around these things. If you look at all the hacks that have happened, especially the ones on Ethereum, there haven't been a ton, fortunately, so far on Solana. It's always weird things, right? That you're like, how would anybody have ever thought of that, right? They like, pounded it with, transactions in specific orders with specific, instructions. And that's the stuff that you can't really control for, but we're going to do our best to make sure that that doesn't happen. We're going to rely on external auditors as well for kind of a double check. But we haven't seen anything major on Solana yet. And I think part of that is because Rust is a much more secure language generally than Solidity, and Anchor especially does a good job at protecting against a lot of the typical smart contract mix-ups that you would have with the way that Solana blockchain works.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And it's really nice to hear that you guys have your internal procedures and then also going out to third parties and having them do all their own due diligence there. That's just a general question I kind of look to throw out. Another one that I typically ask as well is like, how do you guys look to get general users really? It seems like you guys are really want to get high monthly active users, not these metrics of just TVL and all of this. How do you guys really look to bring users into the NFT space onto your platform? And I know we touched on a lot of this, but maybe just summarize it a bit.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things we're doing in terms of like bringing more people to the platform is we're working directly with collections, which is pretty unique for an NFT liquidity platform. But I think that's where the users are, and that's kind of where the pain point is felt the deepest. The people in those groups tend to have these very large NFT portfolios, and that they want to get liquidity on. And then kind of from a broader perspective, we're definitely excited about the prospect, as I mentioned earlier, of bringing people who have never had an NFT wallet into the space. And so I think a lot of this actually comes from working with influencers and celebrities and people who are looking to launch something like an NFT collection or fractionalize an NFT they own. And it's about bringing those people in for the first time, doing kinds of drops where they're fractionalizing an NFT, and they get their crypto address for the first time. They can earn yield on their NFT for the first time. And it ends up presenting a really great segue for people to start at kind of this NFT point, which a lot of people have had a lot of success in bringing mass market into, and then very easily transitioning them into DeFi, because now they can earn yield with their NFT and they don't need to kind of explore other platforms and look into other like DeFi projects or really understand anything. It's like, okay, I bought this thing that has value and now I can earn money on it. And so that's kind of the transition we see. I think another thing that's like super important for mass market adoption that we're thinking more and more about is a mobile wallet. Just like for some of these NFT things, very NFT centric. I know Phantom's got its like mobile wallet coming out soon, but we're hoping to have kind of some of these DeFi integrations and these NFT drops really built in. And so it feels more like a consumer social app than anything else. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to say that, Luke.
No, oh, sorry. No, that's amazing. And I think I'll just throw something on there, right? The idea of being able to get one of these top collections without some of these insanely high floor prices just speaks for a lot of that question in its own. I think this is starting to bring us to the end of my questions here. If anyone has anything in chat that they want to drop in, feel free to do that. But I just am curious to hear about what you guys are thinking, what's going on with your DevNet and closed beta. How has this been actually seeing the product live? What are just your thoughts on it so far?
Yeah, so we've been actually focused the past few days, and we're going to be launching this with the Playground Waves drop as well as a website redesign. As I mentioned, we're kind of centering our focus around the two sides of this marketplace, which we're realizing are equally as important, both the yields getting side and the exposure side. So we're orienting our platform to really make it clear how to earn yield and really make it clear what you're getting exposure into. And we're also adding a dark mode that was heavily requested in our Discord. And I'm also personally a fan, which is something Luke and I disagree about a lot. But yeah, and so that is coming up soon. But kind of shortly after that, as soon as perhaps next week or the week after, we'll be rolling out the index funds and then pushing towards more creative forms of index funds early next year, as well as that liquidation engine we mentioned. And so that's really what's on the roadmap for us. Everything's coming along quite nicely. Like we have everything done for the most part. It's just about stress testing it and making sure it's ready to kind of hit the market at scale. So excited for all of that.
Yeah, and that closed beta for kind of the users and the folks in our community who have been very engaged, and a few others that's going to roll out in January is going to kind of be the first, I guess, full comprehensive version of the product. Whereas like what we have now and what will be continued to roll out in this closed alpha over the next month and a half is very much, kind of snippets, snapshots of like what we can do and what people are going to be able to do using the platform. But we want to give kind of privileged access to those who have been with us for a while now to kind of like that full experience and getting access to that. But we will be releasing kind of more details as they're ready on how kind of early 2022 is going to play out, which we're both very excited about where all of this can go. It's gonna be a fun year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm incredibly excited to see what you guys come out with. The website as well. I mean, I was messing around with the DevNet you guys have, and I thought the UI was already pretty good too. So to hear that changes are coming and you guys are constantly looking to improve these things are great. And then even just on that note of the launch date and having it in 2022, doing sort of this closed beta, I think this again ties back into that security question, really focusing on doing things right. You don't need to open it up to this mass market yet. Really hone down the product, make sure you guys get what you like. And it seems that's exactly what you guys are doing there. And that sort of wraps up everything I have for myself here. I really appreciate you, Luke and Mary, for joining us today, outlining Bridgesplit. We're definitely keeping an eye on what's going on over at Solana News. We'd love to have you guys back on again. Is there anything else exciting you guys want to add on? If not, I'll just go ahead and wrap this up for us.
I'll mention quickly that we're hiring for engineering, design, community, and business roles right now. So if you're excited about kind of this next wave of DeFi and bringing a whole new asset class into the ecosystem, please reach out either via DMs or email.
And hop in our Discord if you're not there already. We like to have some fun in there.
Awesome. I will drop the link in the chat right after I wrap this up. Thanks again so much, Luke and Mary, and I'm sure we'll connect soon.
Sweet. Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Awesome. So that does it for our stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bridgesplit was great. And I think really if there's anything to take away, it's the fact that liquidity will be coming to NFT markets in more sort of capital efficient ways, and overall just providing less barrier to entry into the market. We see crazy floor prices anywhere from 20 to 50 plus SOL. And so being able to fractionalize these NFTs, earn yield on them, and even collateral will be massive moving forward in the future. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. If you like the content, please go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and we'll definitely be back with more live streams.